We're here today with Larry Morton, who's chairman of Hal Leonard Publishing, the world's leading music publisher. Now, Hal Leonard as a company really needs no introduction because anybody who's ever taken up a musical instrument has most likely encountered a Hal Leonard product somewhere along the line. Now, Hal has recently been in the news because it has merged with Muse Corporation, which is best known as the parent company of Ultimate Guitar, the go-to website for downloading guitar tabs. And it's hard to overstate just how popular this website has become because last year it downloaded around 300 million tabs, which is an astoundingly large number in the context of our industry. Now, mergers and acquisitions are often described as groundbreaking, earth-shattering, seismic, and that's a lot of hyperbole. But in the case of this Hal Leonard Muse tie-up, I think those words really are significant because here you have the world's leading print publisher, a very successful business in its own right, and this cutting edge digital delivery system. And putting these two together does have the potential to seismically transform the way music is made, is delivered, and is just presented to the world. So, Larry, you're in the thick of this. Give us your take on the significance of this transaction for the whole music business.
And when I think about what that means, you're really putting together, as you pointed out, Hal Leonard is the world's largest content creator of physical goods and digital, but physical, curated, high level, perfectly produced kind of music representing all the great artists, educational materials, and so forth, and primarily physical and primarily through B2B. Muse Group, on the other hand, is purely digital, purely direct to consumer, and really driven around technology. So you have two very different things. But the reason this is really interesting is it's bringing together a 360 environment for music making. Muse has, you touched on it, but Muse Group has some astounding numbers. They have 400 million monthly average users to their various platforms that you mentioned, Ultimate Guitar, MuseScore, two others that are more on the audio side, Audacity and audio.com. And you put that together, you have 400 million monthly average users. That's a lot of music making going around the globe. And I think so putting Hal Leonard's content and that kind of reach is really exciting. And then going the other direction, bringing Muse's technology into the Hal Leonard world of B2B and music education is also very interesting.
These two companies, very disparate or very different. Describe the strategic strengths of them and how you think they might complement each other.
I'll give you an example. So we sell about 20 million units a year of books that are designed to get you playing, to get you started. So that's kind of like the book ones of what we do. As I said, Muse has 400 million monthly average users, and about a third of those are very entry level. But where they're coming in is very different than the traditional learning process. So there's a baseline far below what we think of in terms of beginners. And then the other side of it is, the tools for music making have changed a lot since guys like you and I got started in this. And so there's a whole generation, actually several generations of music makers that I would call them like the garage band generation from Apple. They're using digital audio, they're putting together samples, beat matching, virtual soundtracks. They're putting together music in a different way, and that's making music. So it's a bigger, broader world than I think what I and a lot of others at Hal Leonard thought it was.
400 million people and your 20 million Hal Leonard books. And we're saying if you have a Venn diagram, where's the overlap on this? Are these completely separate, or there's some overlap or a lot of overlap in
there? There is some overlap,
completely
no
different
doubt.
Groups of people?
Well, I think it's all of the above, honestly. I think because of, for example, there's a certain level player in the Muse world who gets to a certain point where they've accomplished enough musically where they're ready to really learn and get up to a higher level. And that's where Hal Leonard kicks in because they need that better material, whether it's physical or digital. So I think, when I look at how we fit together, it's really the full gamut of music makers from that very casual online, basically making music on their phone or their iPad or their laptop, kind of that level of user, all the way up to a professional orchestra where Hal Leonard's involved and everything in between.
You guys have a high level of art and craft in just engraving music, putting notes on a page to make them appealing and attractive. Is this a skill that you think will complement the offerings at Muse/Ultimate Guitar?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, it goes both ways because Muse has been very eager to get access to our incredibly perfectly musically produced engraving files and arrangements and transcriptions and all that to share with their online communities. But likewise, what we've learned through Muse, like a lot of different industries, there's an enormous appetite for people to create and user gen. And so some of that is just communal. It's just almost a satisfaction of I've created my own arrangement. I'm going to share with my friends and see what I was able to do. But there's also an element to where it becomes a proving ground for future composers and arrangers that we will publish through the Hal Leonard channel. So
Okay.
that the two fit together in a very interesting way.
Friendship. But back in 1998, when Ultimate Guitar started, Hal Leonard and the rest of the print music community viewed them as an outlaw. And
Absolutely.
and how do I put this delicately? They had a casual attitude towards paying royalties and respecting copyrights. And
Oh,
they were
absolutely.
just like bad, 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 bad. So somewhere along the line, fences have been mended, Ultimate Guitar became legit, and now you guys are in a corporate marriage. So how did
Yeah.
that all happen?
It's important though to point out, when back in the late 90s, this was in the era of Napster and MP3.com, and all IP, music IP, and many kinds of IP are getting ripped off, and nobody's getting paid for it. In the middle of all, including a company people know now as YouTube, in the middle of that, this kid, this late teenager kid in college studying finance in Eastern Europe, starts a little thing in his bedroom of his college dorm to figure out how to share tabs with other guitar players.
Mhm.
And Eugenie Nadenov founded his company literally in a college dorm room, creating some guitar tabs, frustrated they can't quite figure out this song or that song. He can't find it in his local store. In those days, you couldn't find it online, and he starts sharing them with other people, and this thing explodes. Time marches on, it becomes a real business. They're selling ads. The rest of the industry, the legit part of the industry, is saying, hey, what's going on here? This guy's ripping everybody off. To his credit, he eventually found a person in the US named Jonathan Keel, and Jonathan's a legit professional, and he worked with Eugenie to help him become legal. And so we were the first company to partner up with Eugenie and Ultimate Guitar and help them monetize and accurately figure out who to pay. And so that was really the beginning of it. So there was that. And I think from Eugenie and the Ultimate Guitar people, they realized to really mature and become part of the music community, you got to pay for the music.
Yeah,
If you
yeah.
really respect these artists that you claim to love, you got to pay them. So we worked together. And, it's really that's how it got started. If you look at the record industry, they did it all wrong. I mean, all they focused on was shutting down MP3,
Yeah.
shutting down Napster. They weren't focused on giving the consumer a viable alternative until iTunes came along. I feel much in the same way. I'm not comparing Hal Leonard to Apple or Muse Group to Apple yet, but I feel like we did the same thing. I think we figured out a way together with Ultimate Guitar and Hal Leonard to legitimize how to access this music and pay for it. And that really, but that context when Eugenie started his company really was him and a laptop in a dorm room.
Yeah.
When he started it, it was in the context of everybody sharing everything online and nobody
Yeah.
has an idea where it's going and who's paying for it.
And so I look at the broad scope of the books that have been the mainstay of Hal Leonard's stuff, and they're method books, they're popular music, they're classical, and I see some of them that seem durable and will remain in print. I'm
Yeah,
really
legitimate data driven proof to say print's not going away. But it is changing, and certain parts of print are far, as you're alluding to, far more affected by digital than others. But I'll give you an example. So Taylor Swift just dropped her latest album, the Torture Poets Society, and because of the way the audio world has changed, those new songs get dropped on audio platforms at midnight around the world. So we have a team which we set up several years ago in Australia that as
so you
soon as
catch it
songs
early.
we catch it early. So as soon as songs hit anywhere, any substantial artist, as soon as they hit, our team in Australia transcribes and gets it to us. So that by morning in the US, the day after it's been released at midnight in Australia, our editors approve it. We review it. If there's any approvals needed, we get on it. But it's digitally available within a couple hours. So by the time most of the Western world wakes up, it's legitimately legally available for streaming. But then a longer tail is now we're going to produce that book and we're going to do all the work that's needed. That's a lot of approvals, artwork and physical and all that. And that might come out a month later after the album has been released. For physical songbooks, to your point about digital, it really takes a pretty high level artist to make a physical songbook work these days. Whereas
Okay.
10 years ago, 20 years ago, we could do B level and C level songbooks and they would still sell enough to merit the job, the print
Okay.
run. Now they don't. So
So now you need
more
a
and
Taylor
more,
Swift.
you got to be a big enough artist to really carry the cost of that songbook. It's the
Okay.
economics. But then, as you point out, the educational classical side has gone incredibly stable and strong. There's something tactile about people want to hold those books, they want to mark them. I mean, we have apps that can do annotation and all that on the app, but they physically want to hang on to it.
Okay. And so you take all this technology together, what you're doing, what Muse, do you see this as something that really has the potential to make or just entice more people into trying to make their own music and create stuff?
I do. And, I don't say that lightly. I say it with passion and conviction. Of course, over the years, Hal Leonard has always done that. We continue to push the envelope about how you learn incorporating technology. When I look at what Eugenie and his team have done at Muse and MuseScore and Audacity, it's the same thing. It's just new technology tools and new ways to make it easier for people to play. And so I think it's just one big continuum. And,
Yeah.
Brian, I will just one footnote. It really exacerbates me. I get frustrated by this notion that music making is dying or
Oh, yeah.
it's like Mark Twain's quote about death, reports of my death have been exaggerated. You know, they've been telling us the music industry has been dying for my entire career. For almost 40 years, I've been hearing it's dying and the
Yeah,
budgets are being cut.
it was always better at some other point.
It's all a big smokescreen, as you pointed out in your editorials. The appetite for music making is enormous and ongoing. The challenge is, are we giving these new generations the tools they need and the content and the way they want it? That's the real big issue.
Well, there are a lot of ways to divide the music industry. You can product type, musical styles, but one of the
Right.
ways we've always thought is there are two kinds of music consumers. We call them the impulsive and the compulsive. And the compulsive would be sort of like you. You're just going to do it and you dedicated your career to it. And so that's like this small slice. And so you really don't have to do anything about addressing them because they're going to do it even if you
Right.
put everything, you have unlisted phone numbers, you deactivate all the websites and you put barbed wire around the stores. You're still going to find a way to do it. But then there's what we call the impulsive music maker, someone who can be enticed to do this. It's not a life calling for them. It's not that deeply ingrained, but they can find some interest and satisfaction. And that's sort of, where the opportunity to expand the business is. And that,
Absolutely. And, I think Muse Group, one of the learnings here that it's been rather shocking to us is how sophisticated Muse Group is and is understanding consumer activity and behavior and this whole exploring, do I want, what am I going to learn? How am I going to learn it? What are the friction points along the way where you stop? Their online ability to study that data is really eye-opening. But at the same time, Hal Leonard's has deep roots in B2B and physical. So it's not pick one to us. We're going to continue to support our retailer network. This summer we've got a little over 100 workshops and events queued up. If we collectively with Muse Group and Hal Leonard, we do a good job and create more music makers, everybody benefits. Our collective corporate slogan is play, learn, create. Because if you get people playing, they'll love it enough to want to learn. And if they learn, they're going to get to a point where they want to create. Well, at the risk of being showing some hubris, I think our industry partners with gear manufacturers especially should be rooting for our success
oh,
because if
absolutely.
we do well, we are creating new customers for decades to come. That's the whole point of this.
Well, this is great, Larry. I appreciate your insights on this. It's always enlightening to talk to you. And thank you for this. And all the best of success to Hal Leonard and Muse for years going forward.